Meeting to order. That's good to see everybody tonight. It looks like we beat the rain getting in here anyway. We'll see how it goes when we get out. So I'll call the meeting of Tuesday, September 20th, meeting of the Temple Terrace Community Redevelopment Agency to order. First item is approval of the minutes from September 6th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any motion to second? Any adjustments to the minutes? If none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. The minutes are approved. Next item is approval of Temple Terrace CRA meeting dates for fiscal year 22-23. And our business relation manager, Greg Pauley, will explain.
Good evening, everyone. Greg Pauley, Business Relations Manager. I'm going to keep this very brief because there's other people more important to present to you tonight. I simply have to solicit your approval for the upcoming year required meetings. The dates that I've chosen for your consideration are consistent with our previous actions, and that is we usually try to set our regular quarterly meetings at the second, just before the second council meeting of the second month of each calendar quarter. So if I could please get the slideshow brought up. I have those here for you to consider. Tuesday, November the 15th, Tuesday, February 21st, Tuesday, May 16th, and Tuesday, August 15th. And again, I'm sorry, I think I said the 15th there, it's May 16th. These are consistent with that same scheduling routine that we've used in the past. The only difference is here, for our traditional meetings, we have moved it to 5:30, but obviously for meetings that require more time, we would ask that you allow us to publish those starting at 5 o'clock if we do need more time.
Thank you, Mr. Pauley. Are those dates a problem for anybody? Any discussion on the dates? Is there a motion to approve the proposed dates?
Move to approve the dates as proposed.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Those dates will work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is a resolution approving fiscal year 22-23 Temple Terrace Redevelopment Agency annual budget. Interim Finance Director Jim Ingram is here to explain. Welcome, Jim.
Good evening, Mayor Ross, City Council, Board.
Mike, could you close that door for us, please? Thank you.
It is recommended that the Board of Directors solicit public comment and subsequently adopt the resolution approving the annual budget of the Temple Terrace Redevelopment Agency for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. When the Temple Terrace City Council adopted its findings for the creation of a redevelopment district, the City Council designated itself as the Board of Directors for the newly created Temple Terrace Redevelopment Agency, TTRA. As such, the TTRA exists as a dependent special district operating under the restrictions of Chapter 163, Part 2 of the Florida statutes. The Board of Directors of the Temple Terrace Redevelopment Agency should take action this month to adopt its budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. In keeping with past practices and the requirements of Florida law, the TTRA budget was posted as part of the city's proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 budget document. The content of the budget reflects the policy direction provided by the City Council in its tentative budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. As has been done in years past, this year there was no need to amend the 2021-2022 fiscal year budget because all of the revenue from ad valorem contributions and the transfer from general fund was used to pay a portion of the debt service for the redevelopment debt service. There were no other expenditures out of this fund as of the date of this memo. The TTRA will receive its tax increment funding from Hillsborough County, the Tampa Port Authority, and the City of Temple Terrace. Tax increment proceeds are estimated in the amount of $905,810. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? Seeing none, council members, questions for Mr. Ingram? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the budget?
I move to approve the budget.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. The budget is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Next item is a summary of proposals for the community redevelopment area properties. Misters Odom and Worthman are here. Good evening, sirs.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
It's good to see you.
No, it's good to see you guys. It's been a while, but we've been hard at work trying to get, work out some of our action plan for you guys. I wanted to start a little bit. Colonel Worthman's going to be going through the proposals, two proposals that we have tonight. But I'd like to start with this because this is sort of sets the table for, I believe, what's coming. On this first page, what you'll see is interest rates on the 10-year Treasury, U.S. Treasury, and the 10-year, 2-year and 10-year. Anybody who's ever owned any CDs before, bought CDs before from a bank, know that normally when you go to a bank, you buy a 1-year, it's 1%. You buy a 2-year CD, it's 2%, and usually the out you go, the higher the rate gets. Well, you'll notice there's something kind of wacky about this. And obviously, the environment has changed quite a bit since when we started. This is what's referred to as an inverse curve. Yield curve. It tends to be a fairly decent predictor of a slowdown. What we don't know is that Florida, how bad it was going to end up being for Florida, but we've already started to notice anecdotally as well as other data that's coming out that things are starting to slow. We're still. For us, sales are still robust, but we're starting to cough up some deals now because the interest rate doesn't make sense anymore. So I want to try to paint a little picture of what's going on because I still think the timing is good, but obviously the future is going to be somewhat cloudy. Our forecast is for a continued decrease in vacancies, which is a good thing if you're an owner of retail properties through the second quarter of 2023, and then we're expecting to see that flip around pretty dramatically into the third quarter of 2023. The second page here gives you a little bit idea of the spread of what's been going on over the past year, and right now there's 41 basis point difference between the 2-year and the 10-year, and what you're seeing now are if you're an investor, you're wanting to move to the shorter term. So the banks do too. The banks that can earn a higher return on the shorter rather than going longer. So you're starting to see some retraction in some of the banks pulling their horns in a little bit of the developers. It's not bad right now. I'm just letting you know the future is starting to become a little bit murkier when we look out a year in advance. So I think it's important information when we're discussing tonight because it might be dramatically different 6 months from now or a year from now if we're still having discussions about these properties. So, Colonel, you ready to? Do you have any questions for me before I sit down?
Council members, any questions? No?
Okay,
Very good, thank you.
Colonel.
Welcome, Colonel. Pleasure to see you.
Mayor, council members, great to be back in front of you. I'm going to talk just briefly about the vetting process that we used. So the first thing we looked at is concept. We wanted to ensure the project was in line with the city vision, the land development code, and your redevelopment plan. So that's what we did as far as the concept goes. On the buyer, we wanted to make sure the buyer was legitimate, had the monies to fund the project. We also looked at the purchase offer that was within the target window of the listing price, that the due diligence met the city guidelines of 90 to 120 days, and the project could be completed within 24 months. The next thing we looked at is the developer. Did the developer have the experience in completing the same type of project that he had success in the past doing that? And the last thing we did was we looked at the primary end user. If we needed an end user, was it identified going in before going in under contract? And if required additional end users, that they could be identified prior to the end of the due diligence period. Now, the two we're going to talk about tonight are we're going to talk first about 8447, which is the one that is the L shape with the old Indian restaurant on it. The second one we're going to talk about is 8901, which is just down to the south of the Fountain Shops. Now, as far as 8447 goes, we've had it, it was listed on the 6th of July for about 75 days on the market. There's about 41,000 views of it. We got 9 legitimate leads. Out of those 9 leads, we had 5 hard offers. And after the vetting process, we were down to 1, and that's what we're going to have here tonight. As far as 8901 goes, it was listed on the 14th of June, so about 97 days on the market. Had about 45,000 views. We had 19 leads that we ran down, and out of those 19, we had 5 hard offers, and then from the vetting process, we narrowed down to 1, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Colonel,
The-
can I ask you, I hate to
Go ahead,
interrupt
go
the
ahead.
flow,
No,
but can I
sure.
ask a question on this before I lose
Sure.
mine? When we go from 5 to the 1, is that vetting process done in conjunction with staff? What's that, is that how that works? Okay.
You want to go ahead, please?
I don't mean to throw you off, before we leave this,
Yes, sir. What you would consider a true viable buyer, the colonel brings them to, in this case, the city manager and myself. And in many cases, we conduct either face-to-face meetings with the potential buyers or Zoom meetings with the potential buyers. And it's from those meetings and from those discussions that they are then given additional information regarding land use requirements, the actual building architectural requirements for the area, and so on and so forth. Now, from that, you will see some of those buyers maybe take their project to other markets. Some of those buyers will stay interested in our projects here. The Colonel and Mr. Odom then step into the second phase of that vetting where they're looking at the true viability. Does this builder have experience building what they want to build or what they say they can build? And do they have the financial capacity to make it happen? And that's where I'm going to turn it back over to the Colonel because that's exactly what he has been doing for the last couple of months.
okay, that's good enough for now. If there's further questions, we'll come back to that, but that's what I was.
Now, remember, Mr. Mayor, we had the 30-day public notice out there too, and they had to meet all those requirements that are in the notice, and that's what they did before the deadline, which ended on the 6th of September.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
So I'm going to go, if we could have that slide with 8447 on it first. The next slide, please. Oh, do I have to do this? I knew it.
Nope, we got it right here. There you go.
Okay. Let me just get mine out. So the first one we're looking at is 8447. That was on, as I mentioned, the L-shaped parcel, 1.74 acres. And the buyer that we have is Sue Hale. He is a local Temple Terrace businessman. Some of you may know him or not. And his concept is basically to put a hotel on that land and also put retail fronting 56th Street. As I mentioned in the vetting process, we had to make sure that it met with land development code and redevelopment plan, and it did. And so that was one of the things that they needed to have happen. So his proposal his purchase price was $1 million, which was the full purchase price that that you approved, with an initial deposit of $25,000. And then you see the closing costs on there as well, the commissions, and that the estimated tax value of that project after it's completed would be about $12 million. So the ad valorem came out to about $228,000. You know that it's about 0.38 to the city, So about $77,000 is what you'd come out of that ad valorem taxes. The inspection period was 120 days due diligence. Closing period was 30 days after the due diligence. And then the proposed use should be retail or hotel. They'll explain their concept in more detail. Just a brief overview is that they're looking at a hotel, maybe some restaurant, maybe a rooftop bar is what they're looking at. We know that their requirements is to keep it 6 levels or below. So that's basically their concept. And then they would, time to complete is 24 months. Do you have any questions?
Council members, questions at this point? Don't see any, Colonel, thank you.
Okay. All right. The next bid was on 8901, like I said, down from the Fountain Shops. And the buyer is Streamland Development Partners. They're out of Birmingham, Alabama. They're here, seated here as well. They're a real estate development company focusing on retail and restaurant. I know you've seen their slides, so you have a little idea of who they are. Their concept is they have the initial end user, which is a Chipotle, on part of that site, and then the other end user, second end user is to be determined, and they're looking at a lot of end users here, local end users, possibly brewery, restaurant, retail type of thing. And I'm sure they'll be able to expound a little bit on that, and you have your questions. The purchase price, it was, if you remember, we agreed upon $2 million. Their purchase price came in at $1.8 million. Initial deposit $25,000. You see the closing costs, commissions. The ad valorem, it was based on a projected assessment at the end of the project of $4.5 million with the entire project. So their projected ad valorem was $85,000, and then yours would be about $29,000, if I remember correctly, 0.38%. The inspection period, again, followed as the other one did, 120 days due diligence. They do have some clause, and they'll be able to speak to it, where they have an additional time in there, and they'll pay additional monies, because finding the second end user, sometimes it's challenging in this environment. But I think that they said that they could make it happen within the 120 days. Closing period is 30 days from after the due diligence period. The proposed product use obviously is retail and restaurant, and the time to complete is 24 months. Any questions?
So, Colonel, their initial proposal would only use part of the property, that would only include one portion of the property, and then in the future, they would develop the rest.
But they're going to have to come up with a second end user. The other thing for the city to know is that the city will have right of first refusal, which means that they come in with an end user, you don't like that end user, they're not going to put that end user in there, the second end user. But this is what they do for a living. They build a suit. So they'll be able to bring that end user in, build a suit, lease it out on the second part of that land. They do have the initial one, as you know, Mayor, which is Chipotle, and then we're talking about the second one. But again, the first, and that will be in the contract, the first right to refusal. Because you don't want anybody in there, and you want to make sure this is the vision of the city.
Oh,
Thank you. Council members, other questions?
I do have a question. What is the percentage of the Chipotle portion?
No, the way I look at it, it's probably, from what they told me, they'll explain in more detail. I think you're looking at 1.75 acres. I think you're looking at 0.75 acres or so, give or take. It leaves about 5,000 square feet there on the second portion of the parcel. And we're all working together to find that second end user now. We've been working it since day one, really.
Okay, thank you.
Council members, other questions? Mr. Pauly, what do you need from us now? You need us to vote to present these in detail to the council?
Yes, sir, that is exactly correct. If the CRA board finds the summaries acceptable to move forward, I would ask that a motion be brought forward and this board vote on that motion to advance these proposals to be heard and considered by the city council tonight.
Okay. The only thing I might point out, council members, is if the council's of a mind to not present either of these, that we really haven't heard the entire proposal. So I would, if that's the council's choosing, I think in fairness to everybody, that we should give them an opportunity to present their whole proposal, not just a short synopsis that we've heard so far.
I have no problem with
Okay,
that.
so,
My only concern with, how is this advertised for public review?
well,
That
I don't know, because I don't get involved in the advertisement. It's a public meeting, and
something that can be brought up in the meeting, or do we have to come back at another time?
It was on the webpage and it was on the front face and the board in the lobby.
Okay, good, okay.
so it would be appropriate at this time for the redevelopment agency to make a motion to,
Move to advance the two proposals to review by the by the full city council.
Second.
motion and a second. Discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays? We look forward to hearing the details shortly. And for those of you who are patiently here, we've done this a few different ways over the years, and we've, although we're making you sit for a long period of time, we really are trying to avoid you having to go through this whole thing twice. We've had this happen before, where you give us the whole spiel and we ask questions and everything, and then we do it again, an hour and a half later. So, relax, you're welcome. Appreciate your patience with that, but, we really don't know a better way to do it, and I know it takes a lot of your time, but at least you're not up here doing the same presentation twice. Is there other business?
No, sir, that is all the business I have for you tonight. Thank
Agency
you.
members, or is there other business for us to conduct?
No, sir.
If not, we'll be adjourned.